Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission here is always to take these huge stacks of complex ideas, things you'd find buried in academic journals or even ancient texts, and really pull out the knowledge you need to be, well, truly well-informed.
And today we're diving into something it's a fundamental paradox of human achievement.
It really is. It's one that you have almost certainly seen in your own life, or at least you've observed it in other people.
It's that question, right? The one that just frustrates the most ambitious, the most dedicated people. Why do two individuals, maybe with identical talents, a similar education, even the same opportunities, why do they get such vastly different results?
Yeah, one of them just seems to glide. You know the type. They meet the right person at the right time. The perfect investment lands in their lap.
It seems almost magical.
It does. And then the other person, they are running harder than anyone. Just pure willpower, pushing what feels like this invisible treadmill. They spend so much energy, but they're not really going anywhere.
And that difference, that energetic gap, that feeling you get when you walk into a room and you can just sense the ease or the struggle, it's not random.
Right. And that's what the research we're looking at today points to. It's a core concept that kind of bridges everything from Eastern philosophy to modern physics.
The law of vibration.
And it's a simple idea, really, but it's profound. The assertion is that everything in the universe, from a star to the table in front of you to the very thought you just had, it's all just energy.
Everything is vibrating.
Everything is vibrating at a specific frequency. And if you can accept that premise, then the operating system of the universe just becomes so much clearer. The frequency you send out is what organizes the circumstances, the opportunities.
Relationships.
Exactly. The things that circle back to you. It's not magic at all. It's just energetic resonance.
So our goal today is to be precise. We're not interested in, fluffy affirmations or getting lost in dense lab reports. We're here to build a practical, integrated blueprint for you, who we like to call the practical dreamer.
I like that. Yeah, if you're someone who loves a clear diagram, you respect the neuroscience, but you're also ready to explore, profound possibility.
This is your map.
And we've distilled this whole thing down into 5 cornerstones. This is going to be our roadmap for today. First, it has to be awareness.
You can't change what you don't see.
You cannot shift a frequency you refuse to acknowledge. Second is emotional mastery, because feelings, they're the strongest amplifier for your broadcast. Third, thought management. The mind is the control center.
Okay.
Fourth, daily practices. Because that sustained momentum, it only comes from small, repeatable actions. And finally, the goal of it all, alignment, consistently matching your internal state to the frequency of the life you actually desire.
And as we go, we're going to be really clear with our terms and, pull back the curtain on some of the skepticism. Because when we talk about energy, we are talking about verifiable, measurable physics. Right. This isn't mysticism. We know that matter is just energy in motion. And neuroscientists can show that every single thought produces a measurable electrical impulse. You are literally transmitting a signal right now.
So let's unpack that. Let's get into it.
Right.
Okay, so let's start with this. This incredible idea that nothing is actually solid. I find that concept, on a functional level, almost impossible to really grasp. But scientifically, we know it's true, right?
It is. The wall next to you, the table, your own body, it's all just a dizzying, invisible symphony of atoms and electrons in constant motion.
It's buzzing.
It is buzzing. And that buzz is the frequency we're talking about. Recognizing that reality is fundamentally built on these waves of frequency rather than, fixed solid chunks.
Wow.
That's the key shift in perspective.
And what's so fascinating is how this super modern idea, it's echoed in ancient wisdom.
Millennia ago, right. They didn't have electron microscopes, but they absolutely recognized the subtle underlying force.
That connection is so critical.
It is. The Hindus called it prana, the life force. In China, they recognize the essential energy that flows through everything. The ancient Greeks spoke of pneuma. These weren't just mystical ideas to them. They were observations of a tangible force that animated all of existence.
And then fast forward to today, and modern science basically confirms it.
Yep. We're way past the old billiard ball model of the atom. Quantum physics now describes subatomic particles not as solid little dots, but as probability distributions.
A fuzzy cloud of vibration.
That's the perfect way to put it. The particles are behaving as both waves, which is the frequency, and as solid entities. It's the potential that exists before the thing we can measure.
So to make this less abstract, let's talk about something that really visualizes it. Let's talk about cymatics.
Yes, cymatics is the visual proof that tone dictates form.
It's amazing to watch.
It really is. Think about it like this. You sprinkle some sand or salt onto a metal plate that's attached to a tone generator, and as you play a single pure tone through it, the sand doesn't just shake around randomly.
No, it organizes.
Instantly. It rearranges itself into these complex, beautiful geometric patterns like mandalas, perfect symmetries, and then you change the frequency.
And the pattern dissolves, and a whole new one appears instantly.
A completely new, organized structure.
That visualization is just so powerful because it takes the idea out of the abstract and makes it real.
It does, and here's the insight. If a sustained, coherent tone, a pure frequency, can sculpt inert sand into these intricate shapes, what do you think a sustained emotional tone, like profound gratitude or crushing anxiety? What is that sculpting in the matter that makes up your body, your internal environment, and the possibilities you see around you?
So it's not just a metaphor.
It's a demonstration. Frequency is the master organizer of matter. #Tag 1.2. Quantum physics in plain English.
Okay, let's push into the deep end of the quantum pool here.
Oh.
But we have to be careful because this is where the skeptical ear really perks up.
It is.
The source material highlights two huge concepts: wave-particle duality and entanglement. Let's start with duality, which is, it's stunning. The idea that the reality we see doesn't actually exist until we look at it.
Correct. The core idea there is that before we observe it, a particle exists only as a potential wave, a whole spectrum of possibilities. It's just a smear of potential.
Okay.
But the moment an observer applies attention, or what they call measurement, that wave function collapses into a definite actual reality, a particle pinpointed in time and space.
So the application that's often cited is that where you focus your attention, say, on a solution versus on the problem, that's what determines the outcome.
Yeah.
But I have to ask the critical question here, the one the practical dreamer is thinking.
Please.
Isn't that a massive leap? We're talking about subatomic particles. We're not talking about whether I get a promotion or a flat tire. How do we square the difference between observing an electron and observing our macro reality? Isn't that stretching the metaphor of collapsing the wave?
That is a crucial question. And it gets to the very heart of the practical dreamer's mindset. We have to acknowledge that we are using the principle, not the literal one-to-one physics.
Okay, that's a key distinction.
The principle is that the act of observation, or in our case, conscious attention and our emotional input, it converts potential energy into organized reality. So in human terms, your attention isn't just passive, it's an organizing force. If you spend 80% of your mental energy rehearsing failure,
You're making that reality more likely.
you are energetically rehearsing and strengthening that potential timeline. You're giving it more density, more likelihood in your observable world. The quantum principle gives us the underlying why focus matters so profoundly.
That really brings the principle down to earth.
Okay.
Now let's talk about entanglement, what Einstein called spooky action at a distance.
Right. Entanglement is when two particles, once they're linked, they remain instantaneously connected no matter how far apart they are.
Miles, galaxies.
It doesn't matter. If you measure the spin of one, the spin of the other is instantly determined, and it happens faster than the speed of light.
Which just defies classical logic. So what does this have to do with my vision board?
Well, it acts as a really powerful metaphor for connection and manifestation. If you think of your desired outcome, radiant health, a thriving business, as just a complex set of possibilities out there in the quantum field,
Okay.
the moment you deeply invest coherent, focused emotional energy into that vision, you establish a kind of entanglement with it. Every aligned thought, every aligned action tightens that energetic link, and it draws that future possibility into observable contact with your present reality.
This reminds me of that story about the client, Diego. He wasn't just visualizing a successful business.
No, he was so specific. He was visualizing himself giving the acceptance speech for a National Innovation Award.
He's practicing the thrill of it.
The thrill, the sound of the applause, the weight of the trophy in his hands. He established this deep emotional entanglement with that specific outcome.
And when he received the actual award 2 years later,
He had already experienced that moment dozens of times. His energetic field was already familiar with it, so its arrival felt less like a surprise and more like an inevitability. He wasn't just hoping for the future, he was rehearsing the frequency of that future in the present. So when we talk about broadcasting frequency, the brain is usually the first thing we think of. And yeah, every thought fires electrical impulses. It produces measurable energetic waves that you can see on an EEG.
Wait, let's just pause on some of that jargon. When you say EEG, for anyone who hasn't heard that before, we're talking about those caps with all the electrodes they put on your scalp, right?
Yeah, exactly. The ones that measure the electrical activity that your brain is producing, it just confirms that thought is literally electrical energy.
Right.
But the most powerful broadcaster in your body, it's not the brain. It's the heart. The data coming out of the Heart Math Institute, which is a center that focuses really heavily on the psychophysiology of stress, emotions, and this heart-brain connection, is just staggering.
And what did their research find about the heart's field?
They found that the heart generates an electromagnetic field that is up to 60 times stronger in amplitude than the brain's.
60 times stronger.
60. And on top of that, this field radiates physically outward. You can detect it up to 3 feet beyond the body and sometimes even further with really sensitive equipment. And crucially, the coherence of this field, it's tied directly to our emotional state.
So when someone says they get bad vibes or good vibes from a person across the room, that's not just a poetic way of speaking. They might literally be sensing the field being generated by the other person's heart.
That is exactly the implication. Your heart's field isn't just powerful, it's incredibly dynamic. The research shared this really powerful case example where a patient was told to recall an embarrassing memory from their youth.
Okay.
And the heart rate variability monitor immediately showed these jagged, erratic, incoherent patterns. Just chaos. Then they were asked to shift their focus to a memory of genuine pride, of heartfelt appreciation.
And what happened on the monitor?
Instantly, the graph smoothed out into these gentle, rhythmic, repeating waves, a state they call coherence. The internal environment went from chaotic static to this clean, powerful radio signal, and it was purely based on their internal focus.
So the physical implication is huge. Your physiology, your entire internal energy signature, it shifts in an instant based purely on the quality of your thoughts and feelings.
The body isn't a passive vehicle for your thoughts. It's the active amplifier of your energetic broadcast.
So if the first section established that you were broadcasting a signal, this second section is all about figuring out what signal you're currently sending out. This is the diagnosis stage.
And awareness it's the master key. It's the difference between trying to fix a complex machine by just randomly hitting buttons versus looking at the dashboard to see which lights are actually flashing.
That's a great analogy.
You cannot successfully shift a frequency that you refuse to acknowledge. If you just try to layer high-frequency practices, affirmations, vision boards, onto this low-frequency foundation of deep-seated anxiety or self-doubt,
They won't stick.
they won't stick. The foundation will always, always win.
So we have to locate the signal before we can even think about adjusting the dial. The research identifies 3 primary transmitters that all blend together to create our unique vibrational signature.
Yes, the 3 transmitters that define your current frequency are thoughts, emotions, and action.
Okay.
Your thoughts are the raw information, the content. They fire those electrochemical reactions in the brain. That's the rapid-fire pitch of your broadcast. Your emotions, they're the amplifier. They determine how loudly and powerfully your station is blaring across the energetic airwaves.
And then action is what makes it real.
Action grounds the vibration in the physical world. It solidifies the signal so the universe reads it clearly. They're completely inseparable.
So if I'm thinking I might fail, the thought is the pitch. The anxiety that follows is the amplifier, and then procrastinating is the grounding action.
That is a perfect synthesis. That entire loop thought, emotion, action, that's the vibration you are sending out. Hashtag 2.2. Emotions as your built-in compass.
Let's focus on emotions for a second, because they feel like the real-time translation device. They respond so much faster and more honestly than our circumstances can shift, or even what our conscious mind will admit to.
Emotions are your internal compass. And instead of labeling them as good or bad, which is so limiting and judgmental, we should really view them as pure, unfiltered data.
Right.
Emotional discomfort, that clench in your chest, the flutter in your stomach, that tightness in your jaw, that's an internal compass signaling a frequency mismatch. It's telling you you've made a wrong turn.
The analogy of a GPS failure really resonated with me. You don't get angry at your GPS when it tells you to reroute, right?
Exactly. And we need to adopt that same detached curiosity toward our emotions. Anger, for example, we instantly categorize it as a negative or a low vibe emotion.
Sure.
But when you see it as data, anger isn't a condemning verdict. It's an informative road sign, and it's signaling a violation of something you deeply value, maybe your time, your self-respect, your safety.
So if I'm feeling anxious about a big presentation, instead of just trying to push the anxiety down, I should ask it, what data are you giving me right now?
Yes. The anxiety might be signaling that your internal frequency around your competence or your preparation is low. Joy signals alignment. Sadness signals a perceived loss. The key insight is just to greet the emotion with open curiosity rather than swift judgment.
And that curiosity is what allows you to read your own vibrational dashboard with precision.
Precisely.
Okay, this next principle is maybe the hardest pill to swallow. It's called the mirror principle. The idea that your external circumstances are an inevitable mirror of your internal vibration.
Hmm.
And for a quick snapshot of where you actually stand, the sources urge us to just look at the external results.
The external results are often a brutally honest reflection of the beliefs and emotions we hold most consistently. You don't need some complex energy sensor. Just glance at your relationships. Are they supportive or are they combative? Look at your career. Are opportunities abundant or are you fighting for every single scrap?
The world gives you back what you offer it.
The quality of energy you offer it, yes.
But wait, here's the critical challenge to that. If I'm genuinely trying to be high vibe, I'm practicing gratitude, but my car still breaks down, or my client cancels the contract, or I lose a loved one, is the source suggesting I failed to vibrate correctly? That I'm somehow to blame for that.
This is the nuance we absolutely have to address. The principle does not state you are responsible for every single external event. Some things are just entropy. Life happens.
Great.
However, the mirror principle states you are 100% responsible for the frequency you carry into those events and for the opportunities that arise from them. For the person vibrating at gratitude and resilience, the car breakdown becomes a chance to clear their schedule. Maybe they meet a kind tow truck driver and they reaffirm their own patience.
But for the person vibrating at victimhood,
It just confirms that life is hostile and out to get them.
that reframes it perfectly. So it's not about the initial event, it's about the trajectory the event sets based on your reaction to it.
Exactly. Look at the example of Tessa, the painter. She was a gifted artist, universally praised, but she couldn't sell her work. Why? Because she held this deep, unspoken belief that getting money for her art would somehow taint its purity.
So her internal frequency was totally contradictory.
Completely. I want success, but money is bad. The external result, 0 sales, was a faithful mirror of that internal contradiction. Once she identified and cleared that conflicting belief, shifting her frequency around the value of her work, the external barrier just dissolved.
And the research authors shared a really personal story about this, didn't they? About their car stalling on a sweltering July afternoon.
Yes. Initially, they just cursed the bad luck, but sitting there waiting for the tow truck, they had this realization that their entire life, their career momentum, their health, a tense relationship, it had all been stalling in the exact same way.
Wow.
Their consistent low-level internal broadcast was, I'm stuck, but I desperately hope no one notices. The physical breakdown of the car simply forced them to confront the truth of their internal realities.
Circumstances never lie.
They never lie about the quality of the energy you're transmitting. Hashtag 2.4. Practical tools for self-diagnosis.
Okay, this is the action section. We have a set of extremely practical tools here for immediate self-diagnosis. Let's start with a daily energy check-in.
This is a simple, non-negotiable morning ritual. Before you check your email, before you scroll on your phone, just take 2 minutes, place your hand on your heart.
Okay.
Ask yourself 3 specific questions. First, what am I broadcasting right now? And just name the raw emotion, fear, anticipation, irritation, whatever it is. Second, what thought sparked this emotion? Trace it back. And third, where do I feel this in my body? Notice the physical sensation.
So you're connecting the whole loop.
Thought, emotion, and physical sensation. It gives you a crystal clear snapshot of your present vibration.
The second tool, the thought audit, sounds almost alarming in its honesty.
It is ruthless, but it's necessary. We often mistake our thoughts for facts. A thought audit just treats them as data points. You set a timer to chime every 2 hours. When it dings, you just replay the last 2 minutes of your mental chatter, and you categorize each thought as either expansive or contractive. Expansive thoughts. They open the chest, they feel light. Contractive thoughts tighten your jaw, your stomach, your shoulders.
You just track the ratio.
Track the ratio over a single day. The author's own story revealed they spent nearly 40% of their mental bandwidth rehearsing worst-case scenarios. That is a huge energetic drain.
That ratio alone would tell you why you feel so heavy by the end of the day. And finally, there are 2 tools focused on what the sources call somatic intelligence.
Somatic intelligence is just the intelligence stored and expressed by your body. The core exercise is the body barometer. You lie flat, close your eyes, and you do a neutral body scan from your head to your toes.
And when you find tension,
Every time you encounter tension, a knot in your shoulder, pressure in your chest, you pause and you silently ask, what emotion lives here?
why does this work better than just asking myself, how do I feel?
Because the mind lies, but the body remembers. A man mentioned in the research felt this chronic pressure in his throat. He asked the question, and the answer that bubbled up was this latent grief over years of not expressing himself authentically in his work, in his marriage.
Wow.
The body stores and conveys your true vibration more honestly than conversation ever could. It's a historical and a real-time record of your energetic output.
All right, now that we know how to diagnose our frequency, let's really contrast the two states we're trying to navigate between. High frequency and low frequency living. What does high vibration actually feel like in the body?
It's palpable. High frequency feels expansive. Your chest is open, your breathing is deep, and creativity just flows without effort.
Things just work.
Things just work. Colors seem more vivid, music sounds richer, time itself seems to bend to your will. You get 3 days worth of work done in one afternoon. There's this sense of natural generosity, and the core internal thought is just, of course good things happen. This is my natural state.
The research called this a cascade of micro synchronicities.
That's it, exactly. It's that day where you wake up feeling refreshed, you hit every green light on your commute, you get an unexpected perfect compliment, and the idea you were struggling with just suddenly flows.
It's not one big lottery win.
No, it's a constant stream of tiny confirmations that you are perfectly in rhythm with the universe's flow.
Okay, now contrast that with the low frequency state. That just sounds heavy, dense.
It is constrictive. Low frequency physically narrows your vision. It restricts your breathing. Your body feels heavy, like you're dragging an anchor through mud. You burn so much energy just existing.
And the world looks hostile.
The world appears hostile, and your internal narrative is critical or paranoid. The description of a low-vibe day was, hitting snooze 3 times, realizing you're out of coffee filters, interpreting your partner's silence as disapproval, and having the printer jam all these little events that mirror and reinforce that inner frequency of struggle.
And scientifically, there's a huge difference in how our body processes these two states. Low frequency literally makes us dumber and less functional.
That is a biological fact. Low-frequency emotions like chronic fear or anxiety, they activate the sympathetic nervous system, our survival mechanism.
Fight or flight.
Right. Blood flow is immediately rerouted away from the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's responsible for high-level reasoning, complex problem-solving, imagination, and it's diverted toward your large muscle groups for fight or flight.
So when you're in a low vibe state,
You literally cannot access your best ideas or digest complex issues efficiently. You are physically incapable of clear, high-level thinking. Hashtag 3.2, breaking free from low vibration patterns. So to start the breakout, we first have to name the saboteurs. And the master saboteur is chronic low-level fear. Fear is just energy contracted. It makes creative solutions unreachable.
and it doesn't always shout, does it?
No, it doesn't always roar like a tiger. Sometimes it just murmurs, maybe next time, or you should wait until you're perfect, just convincing you to avoid the essential risk and growth you need.
And this fear often disguises itself as the quiet grip of self-doubt. The case of Elena, the graphic designer, shows this perfectly. She just kept collecting certifications, taking classes, building this incredible resume.
But she never published her work, never approached major clients. Her energy was focused entirely on preparation because she was vibrating at the frequency of I'm not enough.
And so her life responded to that.
Her external life responded by sending her clients who underpaid or projects that fizzled out, just confirming her deep-seated belief of inadequacy. The essential break came from a single courageous act.
How was it?
Posting one imperfect design, signaling to herself and the universe, I am enough right now.
And we have to talk about the hidden energetic costs of complaining and blame, because they keep us firmly anchored in low frequency.
Oh, complaining is an energetic investment in the reality you dislike. You get a momentary relief, sure, a little burst of sympathetic connection, but you are strengthening the neuronal groove of discontent, making it easier and easier to return to that frequency.
It's a powerful form of self-sabotage.
It is. And blame is even more costly because it hands over your creative power completely. When you say, my boss ruins my life, you are vibrationally tethered to them. You can't move until they move.
So the shift from victimhood to ownership is how you reclaim that energy.
That's the energy reclamation process.
Yeah.
The revised language becomes, I dislike how my boss treats me, and I am capable of choosing my next step. That shift reclaims your energy. It moves your frequency from resignation to possibility, and it gives you back the creative power to move forward. Hashtag, tag, tag, tag 3.3, the neuroscience of getting stuck and getting out.
Okay, let's look at the hard science of why these low vibration patterns are so sticky. Why do we keep falling back into the same old grooves of worry?
Because the brain is a machine that's designed for efficiency, not necessarily for happiness. The phenomenon is called Hebbian learning, or, more simply, neurons that fire together wire together. Low vibe patterns, worry, self-criticism, they're favored because the brain conserves a massive amount of energy by following these familiar, well-worn neural grooves. Change feels hard because your brain is literally trying to be efficient by resisting the creation of new, energy-intensive pathways.
So we need tools to interrupt those efficient but ultimately destructive patterns.
The tool of interruption is key, and mindfulness acts like the flashlight that illuminates those grooves. The moment you catch yourself in a familiar, low-vibe loop like, I'm predicting disappointment, you have to consciously observe the thought without judgment.
Breathe into it.
Breathe into the physical sensation it creates, and then ask, what else is possible right now? That one question pokes a hole in the fog and forces your brain onto a new pathway.
And that leads to the power of reframing, choosing new meanings for events that are essentially neutral.
Events are inherently neutral until we stick a label on them. A harsh critique from your supervisor can be labeled as, I'm being attacked, or it can be reframed as, my boss sees potential in me and is investing their focused time and energy in my growth.
That's a huge shift.
That subtle shift in meaning instantaneously raises your frequency and expands what's possible.
I love the personal story here about the laptop disaster.
Yes, the author spilled an entire glass of water on their laptop the night before a huge, non-negotiable deadline.
The default reaction is panic.
Total panic, despair, cursing fate. But they chose to interrupt that pattern and reframe the disaster as an enforced break my body secretly needed, which will allow for a superior rewrite.
And that calmness changed everything.
The calmness that followed allowed the creative ideas to reorder themselves, and they ended up dictating a version into their phone that was far better than the original. That is proof that the meaning you assign dictates the energy you generate.
We've established that thoughts are the architects, but emotions are the engineers that give the thought its real power. So, Chapter 6 focuses on managing this intense emotional current, starting with the revolutionary 90-second rule.
This concept, which comes from the work of Harvard brain scientist Jill Bolte Taylor, it might be the single most practical piece of information in this entire deep dive.
Yeah.
She found that the actual biochemical cocktail that floods your system when you have an emotional trigger, the adrenaline, the cortisol, it only lasts about 90 seconds if you leave it completely alone.
90 seconds.
Yeah.
That means that any continuation of that intense feeling past that minute-and-a-half mark, it's being fueled by something else.
Exactly. It's fueled by mental rumination, by storytelling. We constantly refire the emotional trigger by telling ourselves the story about how awful the event was, how unfair life is, how we're victims.
The feeling itself is just a visitor.
But our narrative turns it into a squatter. Understanding this gives us sovereignty, it gives us our power back.
So how do we guide the emotion so we can metabolize it within those 90 seconds instead of amplifying it for hours?
We use the alchemy formula. It's a simple 3-step process. Step 1, feel. Engage your somatic awareness and just locate the physical sensation. Notice the tingling, the hot flush, the tightness. This reduces your resistance to the feeling.
Okay. Step 2.
Name. Engage the higher reasoning part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, to calm down the limbic system, your emotional center. Just saying, this is disappointment or this is frustration, it objectifies the feeling. And step 3 is release, often just through a deep, intentional breath.
So you're allowing the feeling to pass through you without letting it stick to your identity or define your next 30 minutes.
That's the art of it, yes. Hashtag 4.2, thought management and alignment. Moving on to thought management, we have to deal with the brain's evolutionary wiring. We have what's called the negativity bias.
Survival.
For survival purposes, our ancestors needed to prioritize bad news. The snake in the grass was way more important than the ripe berry. So this means our brain's factory setting, its default mode, is often static. It's expecting trouble.
So we have to actively and consciously retune the knob against a biological preference.
We absolutely do. And mindfulness is the master switch here because it allows us to catch the inner saboteur when it inevitably pops up. And remember, low-vibe thoughts often disguise themselves as caution.
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to be realistic.
Exactly. The thought, I just want to prepare you for disappointment so you don't get hurt, sounds helpful. But you spot the imposter by sensing the physical contraction it causes in your body. If the thought contracts your energy, it is not serving your alignment, no matter how logical it sounds.
This chapter also gives us one of the most powerful calibration tools there is, visualization, which is really just frequency rehearsal.
It's so much more than daydreaming. When athletes imagine a perfect swing, their brains fire the exact same neurons as if they were actually performing the action. This repetition creates the neural pathways before the physical event.
But the key tip from the research is vital here.
Yeah.
Visualization must include high wattage emotion.
Yes. A neutral visualization is like looking at a light bulb that isn't plugged in. There's no power. The emotion, the excitement, the awe, the relief, the deep satisfaction, that's the electric current. That high wattage emotion multiplies the signal, and it turns the mental sketch into a three-dimensional hologram that your subconscious mind recognizes as real.
And the techniques outlined are specific. We're not talking about needing to do 30-minute meditation sessions every single morning.
Not at all. We incorporate micro-visualizations under 60 seconds
Yeah.
all throughout the day. Just 30 seconds of deeply feeling the desired result while you're waiting in line for coffee. And crucially, night visualization, where you imprint the desired frequency onto your subconscious during that powerful receptive state of REM sleep.
And that story of Carter, who visualized and actually smelled the unique scent of pine floors in his dream apartment weeks before he found it.
It just shows the power of sensory detail mixed with emotion. If we were to name the two biggest accelerators of high vibration, they would have to be gratitude and stillness. Gratitude is the vibrational game changer because it instantly shifts your frequency, regardless of your external circumstances. You can call on it at will.
And there's an immediate chemical response, too.
It's significant. Gratitude releases dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. It literally floods your system with high-frequency feel-good chemicals, and it expands the heart's coherent field. It is the fastest path to coherence.
The sources outline 3 different levels of gratitude, moving beyond just a simple thank you list.
That's right. The first level is intellectual gratitude, listing things you are logically thankful for, like your job or your health. The second is emotional gratitude. That's when you actually feel the warmth and appreciation in your body and your chemistry responds.
And the third and most powerful level
Is embodied gratitude. This is when appreciation becomes a permanent trait, not just a fleeting practice. It's your default setting. You scan your environment for what's right rather than for what's wrong.
And the advanced tool here, thanking the future, that sounds like active manifestation.
It is. It's an energetic preview. You give thanks in advance for outcomes that haven't happened yet. So, for example, before a difficult meeting tomorrow, you might thank the future for the clarity that will guide you and the respect that will be exchanged.
You're creating an energetic preview that says, I trust this is already on its way.
Exactly. And it stabilizes your frequency at the level of certainty and abundance.
Finally, let's explore stillness, meditation, and mindfulness as the essential runway for a clear intention.
Stillness is crucial because it gives the machinery of creation space to operate. It powers down the default mode network, or DMN. The DMN is the brain area that's responsible for all that rumination, worry, and the anxiety loops.
So when you enter stillness, you quiet the DMN.
Yeah.
And what did that silence achieve?
It increases the presence of alpha and theta brainwaves. To define the jargon, alpha waves are associated with relaxed yet alert states, often linked to creative problem solving. Theta waves are deeper, linked to intuition, memory, and profound creative insight.
So by quieting the worry circuits, you get more access to your highest creative and intuitive guidance.
Yes. In that still point, the smallest, coherent, intentional impulse can set vast creative machinery in motion because there's no emotional resistance fighting against it.
And the practical application is turning mundane moments into tuning forks.
Absolutely. The research talks about the nurse in the emergency department who used mindfulness not just sitting on a cushion, but by syncing her breath to the repetitive beep of the heart rate monitor during these high-stress shifts.
Wow.
She turned a source of auditory stress into a grounding rhythm, and it instantly dropped her heart rate and her anxiety. That's mindfulness in action, using the ordinary world to tune your frequency.
We have the tools, and now we move to the stage of full alignment. matching the pitch of your inner state to the pitch of your desired outcome. And this starts with foundational belief architecture.
Right. Beliefs are simply thoughts we have rehearsed so many times they feel like objective truth. And many of these are borrowed beliefs. We inherit them from our family, our culture, past traumas, and they directly contradict our desired frequency.
So you have to identify them and replace them. Where do these borrowed beliefs usually hide?
They hide in the areas of your life with the highest friction. Look at Maya, who wanted entrepreneurial success. Her inherited belief was, self-employment is unstable and irresponsible. You must have a secure job.
And that clashed with her desire for creative freedom.
Violently, she had to consciously replace it with a sovereign belief. My creativity is valuable, and clients eagerly pay for value. That belief shift liberated her energy, and it made her an energetic match for her goals.
So after the internal architecture is set, we move to embodied action. You have to walk the frequency you talk.
This is non-negotiable. Action grounds your vibration into the physical world. If you want to be a CEO, you don't show up dressed like a trainee. The example of Jason, the consultant who wanted to be a keynote speaker, is perfect.
Right.
He was speaking and dressing very casually, signaling casual tech consultant. He proactively upgraded his wardrobe, he refined his website, and he rehearsed his talks at 5:30 in the morning. His new aligned actions signaled to the universe, I'm already that keynote speaker.
And the universe just matched the signal.
And filled his calendar with high-level international conferences.
It's acting as if the frequency is already achieved.
Yeah.
And then there's this beautiful concept of receiving mode, the art of allowing.
This is the balance. Deliberate focus combined with relaxed allowing. You set the intention, you take the aligned action, but then you have to trust the timing of the universe. You have to create mental and emotional space for it to arrive.
Relaxed yet attentive.
Like casting a fishing line and quietly waiting. The anxiety and the urgency around manifestation. Why hasn't it happened yet? That is itself a low-vibe signal of scarcity. The source shared that the ideal beach house offer arrived only after the author let go of the urgency and just breathed away the anxiety, signaling internal trust. Hashtag 5.2. Navigating energy vampires and negative influences.
Okay, so alignment work exists in the real world, and that means we will inevitably encounter some energy static. Let's address the hidden cost of leaky boundaries, often perpetuated by well-meaning energy vampires.
This is such a critical point. Energy vampires don't always show up with malice. They often siphon by accident or out of habit or deep need, and they appeal to our sense of obligation.
The story of Sonia, the talented designer, is classic.
She was exhausted because she was constantly saying yes to quick favors from old coworkers and family who were taking up her creative time for free. Her vibration was running on fumes due to a lack of limits, which was praised as selflessness, but it was really just leakage.
So how do we spot the drain, especially when the person is family or a close colleague?
Your body is always the first detector. Look for immediate physical cues. A sudden craving for sugar or caffeine after a call, holding your breath mid-conversation, or feeling your shoulders inexplicably tighten.
Right.
The research recommends keeping a 72-hour log of post-interaction feelings. After you talk to certain people, are you energized, neutral, or depleted? That helps you identify the pattern.
We also need to address the inner vampire, the limiting beliefs that do the same damage internally.
They are just as effective at draining your energy because they keep the emotional body cycling through shame and inadequacy. If you constantly rehearse the thought, people like me don't succeed, that loop consumes vast amounts of psychic energy that should be used for creation and innovation. You are draining your own reserves.
So what's the prescription for energetic hygiene and boundaries?
First, a daily ritual is essential. Even just 5 minutes of visualizing a golden light waterfall, sealing your energy field after interactions. Second, boundaries have to be clear and conscious. Sonia's empathetic but firm script was key. I care deeply about you and I trust you'll find a great solution, but I'm not able to take that project on right now.
We need to normalize saying that.
We need to normalize the statement, my energy is a valuable resource and I must guard it.
And what happens when we set those boundaries? We usually get pushback.
And that pushback is simply data confirming the boundary's necessity. It signals that the previous arrangement was serving the other person's needs and now they need to adjust. Don't interpret pushback as failure. Interpret it as a win for your sovereignty.
Finally, let's revisit the quantum perspective on this. Coherence is contagious.
Your stable high-frequency field acts as a tuning fork. When you maintain coherence, you influence the weaker fields around you. Sometimes this uplifts the person and they rise to meet your frequency. Other times, it repels them because their nervous system just isn't comfortable with stability and peace. Either way, your alignment is protected and your broadcast remains clear.
Chapter 14 brings everything together by offering proof. And these aren't isolated acts of luck, but the inevitable results of consistent vibrational principles working across health, finance, relationships, and purpose. Let's start with the incredible story of Maya and her health transformation.
Maya was diagnosed with an aggressive, so-called incurable autoimmune disorder. She chose to stop accepting the narrative that her body was only going to get worse. Her frequency was initially one of fear and fighting. She shifted it to one of gentle acceptance and possibility. She began whispering the phrase, "I am willing to feel a little lighter today," and visualizing her immune system glowing, golden, and calm, paired with appropriate self-care, of course.
So the change wasn't just mental, it was an emotional acceptance of a new timeline.
Exactly. She shifted her primary emotional diet from these complaint-filled group chats to audiobooks focusing on health possibility. The fear and fighting were replaced by gentle trust and gratitude for the small signs of life. Within 3 months, her inflammatory markers had dropped by 30%.
Wow.
And while her doctor attributed it to medication, Maya knew the internal story. The frequency had changed first.
Next up, Daniel's financial turnaround. This is highly relatable for anyone caught in that scarcity loop.
Daniel was perpetually in overdraft, and his dominant emotion whenever he checked his booking app was just dread and shame. He realized his relationship with money was based entirely on fear.
So he reversed the cycle.
He changed his morning ritual. Instead of dreading bills, he began blessing every bill he paid, thanking the service he received, the electricity, the Wi-Fi, the roof over his head.
He wasn't focusing on the loss of money, but on the value it created.
That was the frequency shift. He also began blessing his debit card for the times it had worked. This new frequency, one of openness, gratitude, and abundance, changed the energetic flow. Freelance work started appearing without him searching for it, and within months, his balance moved from chronic overdraft to consistent overflow.
Money is energy. Change the signal, change the flow.
That's it.
The story of Layla and Amir's marriage is a fantastic example of co-creation through this kind of frequency work.
They realized their marriage had become this chaotic third entity that was just saturated with the low-frequency static of logistical bickering and minor complaints. They weren't fighting big wars, just constant skirmishes.
Right.
So they implemented a simple 3-part experiment. A silent, synchronized 2-minute breathing exercise every morning, a frequency check at dinner where they just name their dominant emotion without judgment, and 5 minutes of gratitude before sleep.
And the outcome?
The shift released all that ambient static. It reignited the flow. They stopped being critics of each other's behavior and became guardians of their shared vibrational atmosphere. And their children, sensing the calmness, also grew noticeably calmer. They shifted their joint frequency from stress to co-creation.
And finally, Carlos, the IT manager who made that quantum leap to film composer, a major career shift.
Carlos felt successful on paper, but spiritually miserable. He wanted to be a composer. He began a nightly ritual of sketching scenes in a notebook, feeling the director's enthusiastic handshake, and tuning his commute to the yes frequency, just repeating, "I live and breathe creativity."
This wasn't passive dreaming.
No, it was sustained, high-vibe rehearsal. And this consistent signal attracted an unexpected mentor, a junior animator role with a temporary pay cut, and eventually a promotion to lead concept artist. His internal frequency changed, and the doors just became air. Hashtag 6.2. Sustaining high vibration for the long term. Sustaining this work requires us to debunk the myth of the static summit. Vibration is rhythmic. It's like the tides or a surfing wave. You will have dips. The goal is not perfection. It's maintaining an upward trending set point, a higher baseline.
And what are the pillars that ensure this sustainability, the things that will last longer than any fleeting motivation?
We need 3 foundational pillars. First, mindful presence, setting the tone with simple breathing and checking in before the noise of the day begins. Second, authentic expression, journaling your raw thoughts and emotions to prevent that emotional backlog, which acts like low-vibe sludge. And third, replenishing rest, treating sleep as a sacred ceremony, phone off by 10 p.m.
These address the root needs of the nervous system and the soul.
They prevent depletion, yes.
And the measure of mastery isn't how high we can get, but what?
It's emotional resilience, which really determines your recovery speed. The measure of mastery is how quickly you metabolize challenges and return to your baseline. This is fast alchemy. Feel the raw sensation, create space by breathing, and refuse to construct a paralyzing story around the event.
It's allowing the sting of disappointment without letting it hijack your identity or define your entire week.
That's it, exactly.
And finally, a concept that's often overlooked in our ambition culture: energy reserves.
Operating consistently at maximum capacity leaves no wiggle room for crisis or creative inspiration. You have to schedule white space, unscripted hours into your week. This prevents burnout, and it creates psychic oxygen for creativity and adaptation.
And the example of Priya, the tech executive.
Her scheduled white space is what allowed her to handle a massive cybersecurity threat with calm, surgical clarity instead of spiraling into adrenaline-fueled chaos. Reserves fortify your foundation against the inevitable turbulence of life. Hashtag tag outro.
We've journeyed today from the subatomic spin of electrons all the way to the practical architecture of belief. The toolbox is complete. Awareness diagnoses, emotional mastery amplifies, thought management steers, gratitude accelerates, stillness steadies, boundaries protect, and embodied action grounds your highest frequency.
And your true growth lies not in avoiding the challenges, but in the upward spiral, revisiting old challenges like scarcity or relationship friction or fear, but responding with greater wisdom, greater grace, and greater speed each time you meet them.
You are now equipped to stop running on that invisible treadmill and start dancing with the rhythm of life, maintaining your frequency with consistency, not with complexity. The knowledge and the blueprint are now yours. The only thing left is the practice.
And this leads us to our final provocative question for you. The ultimate insight from this deep dive is that sustaining a high, coherent vibration is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of profound service. Your stable, coherent field acts as a tuning fork for everyone around you, your family, your coworkers, your community. Knowing this, what specific small action will you take today to honor your energetic reserve, knowing that doing so makes you a clearer conduit for the collective good?